Behind the Brand features the people who are making things happen. Get the insight to grow your biz from experts who've done it. Get behind the brand.
Hi, I'm Brian Elliott. Thanks for watching another episode of Behind the Brand. Today I'm here with author and blogger Jonathan Fields, author of the book Uncertainty. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thanks, great to be here with you.
Appreciate it. So tell us a little bit about the book, kind of why you wrote it and who it's for.
Yeah, absolutely. So the book is really about the process of trying to create something substantial from nothing. It's for artists, for entrepreneurs, and it's all about how we handle this big, ugly word called uncertainty, which kind of like rules whether we're willing to actually act in the face of not having all the information that we need. It's something that every entrepreneur deals with, not only in the early stages of business, but as we try and take a business to the next level. And it's something that nobody talks about. People just say either you're comfortable with it or not, and that's what makes a good entrepreneur. So I really wanted to explore, is that true? Is it not true? And if you're not comfortable with it, can you get comfortable with it?
So I hear the F word a lot, fear.
Yeah.
What's the difference between fear and uncertainty?
Well, fear is very often a response to uncertainty. So whenever we actually have to make a decision or take an action in the face of uncertainty, our brain is literally hardwired to experience that as anxiety and fear. The fear center in the brain, the amygdala, lights up. It's a fight or flight response. And back in the days where, we walked by a dark cave and there might have been a big animal in there, it's probably a good thing that response kept us from just peeking inside.
Right.
These days, not so good.
So what are some of the maybe non-obvious negative results of that? I mean, some of uncertainty might be analysis paralysis. Maybe we don't get our feet moving, but talk to us about maybe some of the more...
So there are two really big sort of side effects or things that are big negative effects of your inability to act in the face of uncertainty. One is that, like you mentioned, we either get paralyzed. So we become so overwhelmed by the fear and the anxiety that we don't want to feel that sensation in our bodies anymore. So we start to either stop moving forward or backpedal to a point where we don't feel it. The second thing that we do is we actually do the exact opposite. So we start to move so aggressively forward because we just want to get it over with. We don't want to feel this discomfort anymore, that we ignore all sorts of intelligent pivots, paths, possibilities, alternatives that would have made the venture substantially better.
Give us some words of wisdom, tactical stuff that business owners and marketing peeps can do to grow their business, to solve the kind of problems that they're after, such as how do I find new customers, how do I grow my brand if no one's talking about it. It's easy when you've got something super exciting or sexy, but what do you do when it's the opposite?
Yeah, I mean, when you're trying to go to that place where you're just trying to dig down and create something that a lot of people will take notice of. And that could be, like we talked about, something from nothing, or it could be something where you've grown it already, but now it's kind of flatlined a bit, which is happening to a lot of businesses in this economy. And you realize that you need to reanimate it, to go to that place where you don't know what's going to happen. And that requires you to go out and be really innovative, to be super creative, and to actually, and what's kind of counterintuitive to a lot of people is that to be really creative and take that creativity and actually turn it into something productive and execute on it, you need a fair amount of ritual, of routine to work within. So a lot of people think, well, ritual and routine, that's doing the same thing over and over, is the absolute opposite of innovation.
Right.
In fact, we need to create ritual and routine to build space into our lives where we essentially don't do anything to allow room for innovation and creativity and novelty.
So it's getting used to being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's getting used to just going out there, not maybe knowing exactly which way we're going to turn, left or right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the biggest problems that businesses have, especially during the startup phase, is that we all start a business, right? We do our best to make a business plan, but within that business plan are a lot of assumptions. They're just leaps of faith, guesses. And then what happens is over time, we start to execute and assumptions get replaced by data, by fact. We actually start to be able to swap those in. And a lot of times, in fact, most times, the data tells us the initial assumptions were garbage. So we have to make changes, very often to the entire business model, the product, the service, everything, to intelligently respond to the market. But that means abandoning the plan or chunks of the plan, and that makes us really, really nervous. So one of the most important things, skill sets that an entrepreneur, somebody who's looking to reanimate a growth phase in a business has to do is learn how to actually, A, say, I accept that the original assumptions were wrong. B, the market is telling me they want something different. And now, C, act on that. And that's where we were talking about. And then you have to start to build practices and strategies into your life and into your work that allow you enough baseline calm to start to act and really completely shift past and not freak out.
Are there any examples of people that are doing this well?
The vast majority of tech entrepreneurs are sort of, they've grown out of a culture where this is part of it. Some really interesting examples now are the seed accelerator model. So Y Combinator and Techstars, you get small founding teams that basically spend 12 weeks in a 10,000 square foot bunker, and they go in and the guys who fund them will tell you this up front. They say, we're funding the people, and we basically assume that they're going to have to pivot their business and their model numerous times very often within a 12-week window. So in that world, it's almost built in. There's an expectation of it. The challenge is, in the bigger world, a lot of times it's much harder to do without that sort of, almost artificial environment.
Bay Area, New York City, Austin, Texas, Boston, these are hotbeds of innovation, technology, all this cool stuff is happening. What if I'm not there? I have a mature industry. I'm in a mature industry.
Right.
I have a legacy brand or a product. Then what?
It's a great question. So a great example of this is Starbucks, actually. A lot of people don't know that Frappuccino, which is now something like a $3 billion a year brand, almost never existed. It was started by one of the original managers of a store in, I think it was Santa Monica, actually. And she saw somebody else doing something similar, and she called up Howard Behar, who's the former president of the International, and said, hey, can I try this? At that point, very early in their growth phase, Starbucks was just a coffee company. They were very, very linear and narrow in their focus. And they said, no, you can't try it. And she called back, she said, can I please try this? And Howard basically said to her, okay, but don't tell anybody. And he essentially created a private experiment with her. Because, we all know, what's the one thing we don't want messed with in our day? Our morning coffee, right? So he said, keep everything else good, but let's do this. He created a little experiment. She called him back after like a week and said, these things are selling like hotcakes. He brought it back to Howard Schultz and Oren Smith and the rest of the board and said, we need to try this. There was a big debate, and finally Schultz said, okay, let's create an experiment. So even in big legacy brands where it's based on a product where people don't want to have that product messed with, what most of those size companies do is they'll create experiments. So it's not a wholesale adoption of these ideas. They'll say, okay, for a fixed number of days or months or whatever it is, and for a limited budget and for a limited number of people and resources and assets, we're going to create an experiment. And now what you see is this is moving into bigger culture. So you have the huge example is Google's famous 20% time, where there are chunks of the culture where it says we need to do this most of the time in the business. But we're also going to say part of your job is to do things that are very likely to fail. And that's, what you really have to do is start to bake it into the culture, and the big challenge is making it happen from the top down, not the bottom up.
Super if you're the executive going,
right.
Yeah, I'm going to champion this idea, I love it. What do you do when you're on the lowest rung of the totem pole? And you feel kind of shackled, like you don't have any power? Do you quit your job and do something different? Or what?
Yeah, and these are the conversations that I have when I speak to organizations all the time. I'll present to a room full of middle-level managers, or sometimes even higher than that, and they'll say, these are fantastic ideas, we love the strategies, but nobody's going to let us do them. At which point, then the answer is generally, don't present the strategy, present an opportunity, a limited window experiment, where you say, okay, here's what I want. I want a little bit of breathing room and a tiny bit of resources and a fixed window, and we're going to set a metric, okay? And the metric is, will I produce a substantially improved output in a shorter period of time with less resources and less angst and anxiety and higher morale, which is a huge issue within organizations right now especially. And you can usually get buy-in on a very limited level like that from the people who are above you. And then you just let the results speak for themselves.
Okay.
But obviously the best approach is if you can actually get access to the people at the top and say, which is part of what the work that I do, I'll go into leadership teams and say, okay, from the bottom up, people really buy into this, but from the top down, let's explore why this is actually important, not only to you on a personal level in your career, but to the organization.
So maybe we should buy this book for our boss and slip it in her briefcase or something, right?
Maybe.
Yeah. We're on the floor of Blog World. Everyone's got new media, social media on their minds. Where is social media heading? What can we look forward to in the next couple of years?
Well, I think what you have to do is take the last part of that question, the next couple of years, and remove it from the question. Social media is an insanely fast-moving train. If you had asked the guys who ran this conference where it would be right now, what it would look like, and who would be speaking, what they'd be focusing on, I don't think they could have told you. I think the intelligent window for social media these days is probably 6 to 9 month window. What we've seen is it started as really blogs, and now it's evolved into multi-platforms that are huge and robust, where a lot of the messaging is crossing into a lot of different platforms. So I think what we're seeing is the validation from businesses now, which is I think the really huge shift of the value of developing conversations in social media. Not just for trying and push information about the brand out, which has value, but also to engage and to mine and to research what do people want, what do they like and what do they not like. And they're finding that they can actually crowdsource a tremendous amount of feedback and input and data in a fraction of the time and a fraction of the cost if they're willing to invest in creating community.
We've been chatting with Jonathan Fields, author of Uncertainty. Jonathan, thanks so much for spending some time with us.
Great to be here. Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
This Behind the Brand episode is brought to you by Raven Internet Marketing Tools, powerful data and tools for online marketers. Get a free trial at raventools.com/behind.